Welcome to Revenge Report. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let's dive in. I knew I was out of place the second I stepped into that ballroom. Olivia was glowing in some custom gown that probably cost more than my car, floating around like she was on a movie set. And me? I was in a navy blue dress I grabbed off the clearance rack at Kohl's, tags still in my purse. I'd done my makeup in the car, my heels pinched. But I showed up, because I always do. My name's Hannah. I'm 32 years old. I live in Huntsville, Alabama. I fix things for a living. Machines, systems, problems, whatever needs solving. People? Not so much. The reception had barely hit its second round of wine when Olivia grabbed the mic. Her voice rang out, sweet and syrupy at first. She thanked everyone, kissed Adam's cheek, and called the night the best of her life. Then she turned toward my table. I was tucked in the back, like a forgotten coat. And of course, she said, a big thank you to my big sister Hannah for taking time off from her very important job at the local auto shop. Laughter, real laughter, from tables full of her friends, old neighbors, even our cousins. She's basically a hometown hero, Olivia added with a wink, keeping all those old trucks running, one oil change at a time. Even my dad cracked up. Mom covered her mouth, trying not to smirk. I just sat there, wine untouched, smile locked in like I'd rehearsed it. That joke wasn't new. I'd heard it in different versions since high school. It still landed every time. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. My stomach was tight, hands cold around the stem of the glass. I didn't look up. If I looked up, I'd have to see her smug little face, basking in all that attention. I kept quiet like I always had, like they expected me to, because I'm the boring one, the one who never left. The one who works with grease and wrenches and probably still lives in Mom's basement. According to some drunk groomsman I overheard in the hallway earlier, I was about to excuse myself, maybe slip outside for air, when something changed. The crowd was still chuckling. Olivia was still holding the mic, but then I saw him. Tall, gray suit, silver hair slicked back. The groom's uncle, Jackson Wolf, the Jackson Wolf, retired NASCAR legend. He stood up from the head table without a word. Then he started walking, right toward me. He stopped right at the edge of my table. Olivia's voice cut off behind him. All eyes followed Jackson Wolf, but before he said a word, before anything broke the tension hanging in that room, something cracked open in my chest. And not just because of that wedding, not just because of the joke. It went deeper, way deeper. I'd felt that same weight my whole damn life. Because this wasn't new. Back when we were kids, Olivia could spin in a circle and everybody clapped like she invented gravity. She started ballet at 4 and it was over from there. Leotards, sparkly hair clips, makeup before she hit kindergarten. Recital weekends turned into full family events. Dad brought the camcorder, Mom brought roses. I held the coat pile in the back row. I was just there, always there, the extra, the helper. When I was 10, I rewired Mom's microwave after it died mid-reheat. She told everyone at Thanksgiving, not like it was impressive, but like it was cute. Hannah fixed it. Isn't that the funniest thing? A real little mechanic. Meanwhile, Olivia brought home a trophy for most improved turnout in some regional dance thing, and they acted like she'd won a damn Olympic medal. The woman tripped over her own feet half the time, but she smiled big and took up space, and people loved that. Loved her. Me? I was useful. I passed the mashed potatoes and cleared plates without being asked. Nobody taught me that. I just saw how things worked, and how they didn't. At birthday parties, Olivia made dramatic entrances in new dresses while I stayed in the kitchen helping Mom light candles. When she got into a performing arts middle school, they threw her a congratulations dinner. I made honor roll all 4 quarters that year, and no one even noticed. It wasn't like our parents ever said I was less. They didn't have to. It was in the way they looked right past me. In the way they never asked what I wanted. In the way Dad would say, your sister's the one with all the personality. And how Mom would add, but we love how grounded you are. Grounded, quiet, predictable. The words they used instead of brilliant, talented, or ambitious. Olivia caught on to that fast. She played it like a game. Every time I got a sliver of attention, she'd yank it back. At Easter, when I was 12, I spent hours building a little Rube Goldberg machine out of junk I found in the garage. I thought maybe this time, Dad would be impressed. Olivia walked up behind me and said loud enough for everyone to hear, she's building a robot to crack eggs. Isn't that adorable? They all laughed. My machine worked perfectly. Nobody watched. By high school, I stopped trying to stand out. What was the point? Olivia had the spotlight locked down. She could flunk a test and still get, "You're just distracted by all your extracurriculars." I got a B+ in calc and got, "You probably forgot to double check." It didn't make me angry back then. Not really. It just made me tired. And somewhere along the line, I gave into it. I stayed quiet, stayed small. Didn't ask for more. If Olivia was the show, I'd be the stage crew. That's how it always was. That's how they liked it. So I worked in the background. Learned how to fix things when no one was looking. Taught myself code from stolen library hours. Took apart radios and built better ones. Never talked about it. Never bragged. Never made it a thing. Because when I did, Olivia would step in with a louder story, a shinier win, a prettier dress. She'd steal the moment like it was hers to take. Even at family dinners, she'd twist the knife with that fake sweet tone. "Hannah's good with her hands, right? She's our little grease monkey. Nobody told her to stop." And I didn't fight it. Why would I? I was already invisible. Until now. Jackson Wolf was still standing there, still looking right at me. And I realized maybe he saw something they never bothered to look for. Jackson Wolf hadn't even spoken yet, but the air around our table felt different, like someone had finally cracked a window in a stuffy room. My spine straightened a little, just a little. And in that pause, all I could think about was how much they never knew. My family thought I worked at Hal's Tire and Lube, right off Highway 72. That little garage with the faded Goodyear sign and the plastic chairs in the waiting area. They believed I changed oil and rotated tires, maybe swapped out a muffler if someone came in desperate enough. I never corrected them. I let them believe I was that girl in coveralls, who probably smelled like gasoline and lived off vending machine coffee. Not because I was ashamed, but because explaining the truth would have felt like talking to a brick wall. The truth? I was lead systems technician at a classified defense contractor facility just outside Redstone Arsenal. I ran reverse engineering teams that handled captured foreign military tech, radar jammers, weapon systems, encrypted navigation platforms. My name was on 5 patents. My work sat behind sealed doors, coded access panels, and enough red tape to bury a senator. I designed drones that saved lives overseas, vehicles that survived roadside bombs because of what I built into their guts. I trained engineers with master's degrees and watched colonels take notes when I explained failure points on modified components. But back home, none of that mattered. Back home, I was still the girl with grease on her jeans and good hands for a girl. They pictured me wiping dipstick oil off my knuckles while Olivia tagged skincare brands from her sunlit bathroom mirror. I didn't lie, I just didn't talk. Part of that was protocol. When your job involves secure rooms and fingerprint scanners, you learn how to compartmentalize real fast. But the other part, that was just habit. Family had never listened, not when it counted. So I stopped expecting them to. One Christmas, I tried. I brought up something simple, not even classified, just a side component I helped improve on a recon drone. We were all sitting around after dinner, fire going, Olivia showing off her collab box from some makeup brand. I said, "We just finished optimizing a guidance module that can hold signal lock through counter-jamming interference. It could help during blackout conditions." There was a pause, not a curious one, just blank. Then Dad chuckled and said, "Still fiddling with engines, huh?" Mom nodded like that was just the sweetest thing. "You always liked your little gadgets." And Olivia? She didn't even look up. She just said, "You'd be great on a car commercial. You've got that no-nonsense vibe." Then went right back to talking about her followers. I swallowed the rest of what I wanted to say, the real stuff. The nights I slept under my desk, the system flaw I caught that would have crashed a $48 million prototype, the lives that didn't get lost because I paid attention. But none of that had ever earned applause at the dinner table. So yeah, I let them picture me with oil under my nails and a shop rag in my pocket. It was easier, cleaner, kept expectations low. And honestly, part of me believed that even if I did tell them, it wouldn't change a damn thing. Because in their heads, Olivia was the star, and I was just the sister who knew how to fix the toaster. Jackson Wolf finally opened his mouth. "You're Hannah Walsh," he said, voice low but clear. "A guy on my old pit team worked recon overseas. Your code rerouted his damaged unit when it lost mainframe link, saved his ass and 4 others. He didn't smile, didn't wink, just nodded once, like it was fact. Because it was. And I sat there, frozen. Not because I was shocked he knew, but because for the first time in my entire life, someone else did. The Stone Viper mission was a mess from the start. A prototype unmanned vehicle. Sleek, fast, built to survive under conditions that should have been impossible, and in the middle of a test run, the code scrambled. Mid-operation, just when everything was supposed to be smooth. One minute the vehicle was responding fine. The next it was stalling, spinning, and sending random command loops into the system. I'd never seen anything like it. We were all in the field, watching it unfold in real time. My team's leader, a grizzled guy with a deep voice that sounded like it had been scraped raw, was shouting orders, but I could tell we were all helpless. If I couldn't get it back online in the next few minutes, we were looking at a full system failure. The kind that could cause an explosion. The kind that would take out a whole test site. Maybe more. The pressure hit me like a wave. I was in a small, sealed-off lab with no windows, surrounded by screens flashing in all directions. The red emergency lights kept cutting through the room, adding to the pulse in my veins. A dozen engineers and military techs were huddled outside, waiting for me to make a miracle. They didn't know the half of it. I didn't eat for 22 hours. I barely slept. When I wasn't rerouting command codes, I was wiping the sweat off my face with the back of my hand, eyes burning from a lack of rest. Fatigue? It wasn't an option. One wrong move, and we'd lose everything. It wasn't just code I was working with. It was lives. Potential casualties that I'd have to explain to families, to commanders, to people who were trusting us. Somewhere along hour 16, everything blurred together. The numbers, the strings of code. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of ones and zeros. My vision was swimming, and my body screamed at me to stop, but I couldn't. I had to keep going. Then, just when I thought I couldn't push any further, the moment clicked. I spotted the fault in the data stream, the corrupted loop that was causing the vehicle to veer off track. My fingers flew across the keyboard, overriding the error before it could trigger the chain reaction. The control system stabilized. The vehicle came back online. My team cheered. They never even saw how close we'd come to losing it all. They didn't know how much I'd just put on the line. But it didn't matter. The job was done. The test site was saved. Nobody died. The next day, I was flown out to a secure military base for a debrief. A general, tall, solid jaw, all the power a man in his position carries, greeted me at the door. We sat in a sterile conference room, a giant map of the region spread out in front of us. He shook my hand, his grip firm. "You don't wear the uniform, but you've earned the salute." I didn't know how to respond. It wasn't the first time someone had given me a nod of respect in my field, but there, in that moment, it felt different. Genuine. Like they finally understood the weight of my work. Like they saw me for who I was. Not the girl under the hood of some rusted-out car in a forgotten town. But when I landed back in Huntsville, it was like nothing had changed. Olivia was posting another one of her pictures. This time, her in a sun hat on some beach, captioned with a hashtag about hustling hard while sipping a cocktail. She had her life, I had mine. Back home, the only acknowledgement I got for my work was when my dad asked if I could help him with his car again. I gave him the tools, adjusted the timing belt, and sent him on his way. A little nod. A thanks, kid. There were no calls, no congratulations. No one knew about Stone Viper. No one knew about the lives I'd saved or how close we'd come to a disaster. They didn't understand what I was doing because they'd never asked. And I realized I didn't care. The world I was part of, the one that mattered, was the one behind those doors, where respect was earned by the work, not the noise surrounding it. I didn't need my family's recognition, not anymore. If they ever cared to know, they could ask. But I'd stopped waiting. I should have known the rehearsal dinner was going to be a circus when Olivia started loudly talking about how even Hannah would be there, like it was some big deal. Her voice rang out, carrying over the soft clink of wine glasses and quiet chatter at the table. She made sure to look at me with this fake sweetness when she added, Hannah's so busy with her little job. She probably hasn't seen a pair of heels in years, right? There was a chorus of giggles from her friends, the kind that said they were all in on some private joke. A few of them even gave me sideways glances, like I was supposed to laugh too. I didn't. My smile stayed frozen, polite, but tight. One of them, a girl I didn't even recognize, tilted her head with this fake curiosity and asked, "So, do you actually like changing oil, or are you just stuck?" I could feel my throat tighten, but I pushed the words down. I wasn't about to start a scene. I simply shrugged, offering the kind of answer I always gave, the one that never seemed to make anyone uncomfortable. "It's what I do," I said, voice flat, and then I took a sip of wine. My parents were sitting across the table, both of them sipping their glasses, exchanging one of those looks that only parents who've heard their youngest kid make 1,000 cutting remarks can share. It was a mix of amusement and tolerance. "There she goes again," I imagined them thinking. Olivia was always so charming I couldn't look at them. Not right then. Not when I could feel how they always let Olivia's words slide like a smooth stone over water, while mine sank like bricks. I kept my eyes down on the table, my hands gripping the glass, trying to keep the ground under my feet. But I knew this wedding was going to be worse than usual. When the night started winding down and people were starting to head out, Olivia came over, threw her arms around me in this awkward fake hug, and whispered in my ear, "Don't wear anything you wouldn't want to get mistaken for staff." Her breath smelled like too sweet perfume, the kind that clings to the back of your throat, and I pulled away before it could settle into my skin. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. I just gave her a tight smile and nodded like I was in on the joke too. But when she walked away, I felt that familiar lump in my throat, the kind that always came when I was expected to play the role of the dutiful, quiet older sister, the one who was never the star, who never had the good stories to tell. I brushed it off. I had to. I'd been doing it for years. But as I headed back to my room later that night, my stomach churned. My head throbbed from the wine, the stress, and the noise in my own mind. I didn't sleep much, tossing and turning, running through every conversation and every word that had come from Olivia's mouth. The way she'd made sure to remind everyone that I was the one who belonged in the background, who wasn't important enough to deserve more than a quick laugh at my expense. By the time morning came, I was already thinking of ways to stay as invisible as possible for the rest of the weekend. The moment Olivia finished her toast, the room seemed to exhale. But there was something in the air, something electric, like everyone had been holding their breath just long enough to settle into the next round of awkward small talk. That's when he stood. Jackson Wolfe. The room didn't know what to expect. He'd been quiet all night, tucked in the corner by the head table, observing with that calm, unbothered look on his face. But now, he stood, smoothing out the creases in his suit like it was the most natural thing in the world. His broad shoulders cut through the crowd with quiet purpose, and every single eye in the room turned toward him. I don't know why I was the first one he locked eyes with, but he did. His gaze cut through the sea of people like a laser, and for the first time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. I stayed still, not sure what was about to happen. My pulse was hammering in my chest, and I swear the room seemed to grow quieter the closer he got. I couldn't even tell if I was breathing. All I could do was watch as Jackson Wolfe moved past people, weaving through the tables with a steady stride, his eyes never leaving mine. He stopped right in front of my table. The clinking of silverware, the murmur of conversation, all seemed to die down. Everyone was watching now. He nodded once, like he was acknowledging some private truth. "Miss Walsh," he said, loud enough for the entire room to hear, "I've seen your designs in the field. Saved my team's asses more than once." The words hung in the air, heavy but clear, like they were etched into the space between us. I felt the heat rush to my face. Shock, embarrassment, something I couldn't quite place. My mouth went dry, and I had to remind myself to blink. He didn't wait for a response. Instead, Jackson raised his right hand, 2 fingers straight up in the air, and gave me the kind of salute you give to a fellow professional. Not military, but still just as sharp, just as deliberate. It wasn't just a gesture, it was respect, and it was aimed at me. The room went dead silent. I could hear the soft buzz of the chandeliers overhead, the distant hum of the air conditioning. Then, slowly, almost like a ripple, one of Jackson's current drivers, sitting at a table near the bar, began to clap. It was hesitant at first, but then someone else joined in. Another clap, a few more. It spread like wildfire, everyone around the room catching on, joining in. Applause. For me. I couldn't look at Olivia. I knew if I did, I'd see her face, the way her smile would falter, the way she'd try to hold it together, but I couldn't afford to look. Not then. Not when I had finally gotten the recognition that had been denied to me for years. The applause built, filling the room with this weight I didn't know how to carry. It was surreal. They weren't clapping for Olivia anymore. They weren't celebrating her wedding or her picture-perfect life. The noise, the attention, it was all focused on me. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. And when I looked around, I saw the shock on my parents' faces. They were sitting there, frozen, eyes wide. Dad's glass of wine was halfway to his lips, forgotten. Mom's hand was still holding her napkin, crumpled and limp in her fingers. Neither of them said a word. They didn't need to. Their faces said everything. Then Jackson looked at me again. He gave me a small nod, like he was giving me something I didn't know I needed. And just as quietly as he'd walked over, he turned and made his way back to his seat. The room slowly quieted, the clapping dying out, but the weight of it didn't go away. For a brief moment, I was everything I'd never been allowed to be. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. My work, my name, finally, they spoke for me. The applause had barely settled when I noticed Olivia's eyes darting from guest to guest. It was like she was trying to find a lifeline, someone to throw her a rope, pull her back to the center where she could shine. But no one was looking at her anymore. Her gaze flicked to Adam, her husband. He was sitting right next to her, but he wasn't smiling. Not the way he had earlier. His eyes held this quiet disappointment, something I'd never seen in him before. I couldn't help but notice the way he shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his lips pressed together like he was holding something back. Like he was seeing her for what she was, finally. And it hit me. He'd been in her world for long enough to know that this whole image she built was fragile. Olivia tried to recover, throwing out a half-hearted laugh, her voice trembling just enough for me to hear it. Well, guess I wasn't expecting to be upstaged tonight, huh? She said, her words thin, trying to play it off as if it was no big deal, but no one was listening. Not really. The room had shifted. It wasn't about her anymore, and even her forced attempt at humor couldn't pull the focus back. Jackson's voice broke through the silence. He was already standing, looking toward me. Miss Walsh, he said, nodding in my direction. Care to join us? His tone was warm, almost inviting. We've got a few engineers at our table who'd love to talk shop. For a split second, I hesitated. The room felt strange, alien now. My heart was still pounding from what had just happened, and a part of me wanted to run, to slip away before the reality of it all hit too hard. But the offer hung there, and I felt a strange pull toward it. It was my moment, my turn, and for once, I wasn't going to shrink away from it. I stood, almost automatically, and as I moved toward Jackson's table, I caught a glimpse of Olivia again. Her smile had completely disappeared now, replaced by something sharper, colder. The life in her eyes was gone. She was fighting to hold on to whatever control she had left, but she wasn't the center anymore. She knew it. At Jackson's table, the vibe was different. People didn't look at me like I was a curiosity, some small-town mechanic who might be amusing for a second. The engineers, the test pilots, the mechanics, they treated me like an equal. They asked questions, not to fill dead air, but because they were genuinely interested. They wanted to know about the work I'd done, the systems I'd designed, the problems I'd solved. The conversation flowed with ease, and I found myself talking, explaining, not holding back for once. I was seen, not for who they thought I was, but for who I really was. Behind me, Olivia's friends were still hovering, unsure what to do. They looked at each other, then glanced at me, but no one made a move. Their laughter from earlier was gone. The control Olivia had always held over the room was slipping, and they didn't know how to respond. They weren't used to this version of the night, where Olivia wasn't the star. My parents were still sitting at their table, stiff and uncomfortable, their eyes wide, like they'd been pulled into a conversation they never knew existed. Their expressions were unreadable, but I could see it. That same blankness I'd seen 100 times before when Olivia took over. Now they weren't sure what to do with me. It wasn't that they didn't care. It was that they didn't know what to say when their quiet, dependable daughter finally wasn't the invisible one in the room. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to make them understand. I wasn't here for their approval anymore. I was here for me. A few months passed, and things started to settle into place. For Olivia, though, everything started to crumble. Her social media brand fizzled out faster than I expected. Sponsors that had once paid top dollar for her curated, authentic lifestyle pulled out one by one. Her perfect little world of luxury travel and sponsored posts didn't hold up once the illusion faded. Her followers began to see what I'd always known, that her success was built on fluff. She couldn't maintain the facade forever. It wasn't long before her marriage to Adam started to fall apart too. I wasn't privy to the details, but I heard the whispers. Adam started staying late at work, pulling away more and more. Then one day, he quietly moved out. 5 months. That's all it took. They'd barely made it to the 6 month mark, and the cracks in their picture perfect relationship were too big to ignore. Meanwhile, things at work were looking up for me. I'd been putting in the hours, my head down, doing my job, and it paid off. I got promoted to a leadership role, managing a team of engineers. It was a whole new level of responsibility, and I felt the weight of it every day. But I also felt something else: confidence, real confidence. For the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone else to tell me I was good at what I did. My name started getting tossed around in high level meetings. People at my company respected me. They valued me. Still, I didn't post about it. I didn't share my promotion on social media, didn't call my parents to tell them. I didn't need to. I knew what I was doing, and that was enough. The silence around it felt right. It was mine, and I didn't need to make a spectacle of it. Then one morning, I sat down at my desk, coffee in hand, and saw it. An email. From Olivia. I hesitated for a moment before opening it. The subject line was vague, just a string of words, a half-hearted attempt at sincerity. We need to talk. The email was long, messy. She ranted about how everything in her life had fallen apart, blaming everyone: her followers, the sponsors, the haters who didn't understand her, and of course, me. She blamed me too. She asked, "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell us what you were really doing? Why didn't you tell me you were a damn genius and not just some girl who fixes cars?" Her words weren't new. They were the same ones she'd always used to belittle me, to try and make herself feel bigger. But this time, there was something else in them. Desperation, regret. She was finally seeing me, but she was still too caught up in her own story to admit it. She wanted answers, but she wasn't asking the right questions. I didn't reply right away. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, the cursor blinking in front of me. I thought about what I could say, what I should say. A part of me wanted to write back, to tell her everything, to explain the choices I'd made, why I kept my work to myself. But then I realized something. I didn't owe her an explanation. I didn't owe anyone an explanation anymore. I'd made my peace with being unseen, with staying small for them. But not anymore. I deleted the email, and I moved on. I read Olivia's email without feeling anything. No anger, no vindication, just distance. It was long, full of her usual chaos, a swirl of blame and confusion. She asked the same question she always asked. Why didn't you tell me? But it was the wrong question. It always had been. I thought about replying. I thought about typing the words I'd been carrying for years. Because you never asked, because you never cared. I even started to type it, my fingers moving on their own, the words coming up from some buried place in my chest. But then I stopped. The words felt hollow, like they wouldn't do anything to fix what had broken long before. They wouldn't change her or change me. I deleted the draft, and I clicked archive. That's what I'd done for so long, waited for someone to see me, waited for them to understand, but I didn't need to wait anymore. I didn't owe Olivia anything, not an explanation, not a reply, not even my time. I leaned back in my chair for a second, the weight of it all finally starting to settle. I'd built a life for myself where my worth didn't come from their recognition. It never did. The email sat there, untouched, and I felt free. I shut my laptop and headed back to the workshop floor. There, real problems waited. Problems I could fix, machines that needed me. People who valued me for who I was, not who they thought I should be. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't need anyone to hand me validation. I didn't need the spotlight. I just needed to do my work. But if the spotlight ever found me again, I'd meet it standing tall,